Hey there, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we are tackling a really significant topic, one that touches so many lives, often in hidden ways: trauma.
Yeah, we're going to explore what it is, how it affects us, especially, children during development and attachment, and really dig into some promising ways to heal.
Exactly. We've got a great set of sources, research papers, articles looking at the neuroscience, specific therapies like a ritual for implicit memory, CFT.
Right, compassion-focused therapy and also DBT for PTSD and IFS internal family systems, often used with EMDR. Quite a range.
Our mission really is to pull out the key insights, give you a kind of shortcut to understanding trauma's impact and the science behind these different healing paths.
And hopefully show just how resilient people can be. You might find some surprising things here.
Yeah, definitely. Let's jump right in. Where do we start? Maybe with defining trauma itself.
Good idea. So one source describes it as the aftermath of a consciously or unconsciously perceived life-threatening or overwhelming experience, or experiences, plural.
So it's more than just a bad day or feeling really sad. It's overwhelming.
Exactly. And it notes that when grief becomes inescapable, becomes truly overwhelming trauma, that's when PTSD can develop. But trauma's impact can be huge even without that specific diagnosis.
And the sources make a distinction, right, between like normal grief or trauma that we process
Yeah.
and this other kind.
Yes, chronic or pathological trauma. It's often described as unintegrated.
Yeah.
It hasn't been processed and put into the past, essentially.
So it stays active.
Right. It doesn't just sit there as a memory. It shows up as maybe chaos or rigidity in someone's life, persistent anxiety, depression, sometimes for years.
And it messes with connection.
Big time. It's often linked to losing connection with your own body, with yourself, with other people. And it can look a lot like PTSD, even if you don't quite meet all the diagnostic criteria.
Okay, and here's something that really jumped out at me from the sources.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that when these implicit memories, the feelings, the sensations tied to the trauma get triggered, the person often doesn't realize it's coming from the past.
Exactly. It feels like it's happening now. One source even calls it like a dream episode, but without knowing you're dreaming, it feels completely real in the present.
Wow. And the brain imaging actually shows why, doesn't it?
It does. fMRI studies show there's a significant overlap in the brain regions used for recalling the past, experiencing the present, and even imagining the future.
So they all kind of blend together when a painful memory gets activated.
Pretty much, especially in areas like the right frontal insula, that part processes both physical pain and psychological pain. So that overlap can just shut things down, make you avoidant.
And make it feel impossible to imagine a future that isn't just more of the same pain.
Right. The brain can't easily separate the then from the now. So unintegrated trauma isn't just remembering something bad, it's the whole system being stuck, acting as if the threat is still present.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into the neuroscience then. How does this happen in the brain? You mentioned integration.
Yeah, Daniel Siegel's work is really relevant here. He talks about 8 domains of integration ways. Different parts of our experience need to connect and work together. Consciousness, memory, state of mind, left and right brain hemispheres.
And with trauma, these connections are disrupted.
Often, yes. Inadequate integration in one or more areas. It's like different parts of the system aren't communicating effectively. The sources mention blocks between upper and lower cortical layers. That's vertical integration failing.
Like the thinking brain and the feeling body aren't talking.
Exactly that. Your cognitive awareness might know the danger is over, but your felt sense, your bodily awareness, hasn't gotten the message. It's still reacting.
And specific brain areas are involved or
Yeah.
not involved correctly.
Right. Areas like the hippocampus, crucial for putting memories in context, the amygdala, the threat detector, parts of the prefrontal cortex for regulation. They don't seem to be fully engaged in processing the trauma adaptively. Things aren't working together flexibly or coherently.
And the different pieces of the experience, the event, the feeling, the sensation, they get tangled up.
Or sometimes blown apart. Overcoupling, where everything feels rigidly connected, or undercoupling, where it's all fragmented. And interestingly, Broca's area for speech.
Yeah, what about that?
It can actually shut down during the trauma itself, and even later when trying to talk about it.
Which explains why it's so hard to put into words. Your language center literally went offline.
Precisely. And underlying all this is our primal survival system. Stephen Porges's idea of neuroception is key.
Neuroception.
Remind me. It's the nervous system's unconscious scanning process, always checking internally, externally, am I safe? Is there danger? It happens automatically, below conscious awareness, getting the body ready to act.
And the immediate response to major stress, that shutdown of the thinking brain, that's actually adaptive.
In the moment, yes. The flood of cortisol, adrenaline, it shuts down the slower logical parts like the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus to prioritize the fast, reflexive survival responses driven by the amygdala and the implicit memory system. Speed over accuracy.
Makes sense in an emergency. But the downside from memory,
Is huge. Without the hippocampus fully online, especially the left hippocampus, which gives context and sequence, the memory gets stored without a proper timestamp.
so the self just assumes any strong feeling or memory popping up must be about now.
Pretty much. Because there's no internal marker saying, this belongs to the past. And these implicit memories are often right brain, heavy felt, intuitive, nonlinear, spatial, not tied to a clear timeline.
Which is why they feel dreamlike or surface unexpectedly, driving those present moment feelings of panic or shutdown or wanting to fight or flee.
Exactly. And this chronic activation, being stuck in fight, flight, or freeze, it takes a physical toll. Blood flow, nutrients get shunted to muscles, away from organs. Over time, that can contribute to chronic illness.
So the somatic complaints, tension, pain, spasms are part of this.
Very much so. The body is literally holding that unresolved stress and activation. It's a whole system response.
Brain, body, sense of self, all impacted.
Absolutely. And this gets particularly complex when the trauma happens in childhood. It directly interferes with fundamental development, especially how we learn to form attachments and regulate emotions.
How so?
While our early social interactions, feeling safe and cared for, they shape the development of key neurohormones and physiological systems involved in emotion regulation.
And the sources talk about three main affect regulation systems.
That's right. The threat defense system, the resource-seeking or drive system, and the soothing system. They're meant to work in balance.
But early trauma throws them off balance.
Severely. Especially for kids in abusive, neglectful, or constantly threatening environments. Feeling unsafe, uncared for, that's a massive physiological stressor. Conversely, feeling safe and valued is a powerful regulator.
Okay, let's unpack those systems. Threat defense first.
That's your alarm system. Detects danger, triggers anxiety, anger, disgust, and behaviors like fight, flight, freeze, submit. It's tied to cortisol, the amygdala, the HPA axis.
And early trauma makes it hyperactive.
Exactly. It gets overstimulated, becomes easily triggered, stays on high alert, leading to persistent negative feelings and defensive reactions.
Okay, then the resource-seeking or drive system.
That's about motivation, reward, dopamine-driven, pushes us to seek things we need, food, connection, achievement, giving us feelings like excitement, pleasure, satisfaction.
And the third one, the soothing system. This one sounds crucial for attachment.
Absolutely critical. It's linked to calming neurochemicals like endorphins and oxytocin. Gives feelings of warmth, safeness, contentment, connection. It's about feeling calm, settled, okay.
And its development is tied to caregivers.
Directly. It matures alongside the attachment system. Ideally, caregivers are the source of soothing and safety. Warm, loving interactions stimulate this system, wiring the brain for internal feelings of safeness.
So it builds an internal capacity for self-soothing later on.
Yes, and for forming healthy bonds. Feeling cared for literally calms the threat system, lowers cortisol, reduces shame, fosters connection. It's profoundly regulating.
So trauma disrupts this wiring.
Profoundly. Shame, for instance, is deeply tied to the threat system. It's the fear of being seen as flawed, unworthy, rejected. It hits the threat alarm hard.
Whereas self-compassion, that activates the soothing system.
Right. Being kind to yourself when you struggle. Securely attached people generally have more capacity for this self-reassurance. Compassion from self or others activates that caregiving, affiliative circuitry, creating feelings of safeness needed for growth.
So you end up with an overactive threat system and an underdeveloped soothing system.
Yeah.
Always feeling unsafe, lacking internal comfort.
That's a common outcome of early adversity, yes. It creates a huge challenge for healing.
Yeah, where do you even start? The sources talk about the first hurdle being just finding the courage to even look at it.
Because it's inherently painful, feels overwhelming, even dangerous to the system. So naturally, we develop defenses.
Ignoring, denying, dissociating.
Exactly. Or even the body flooding itself with endorphins, natural opioids to numb the pain, physical or psychological.
The endorphin numbing. Tell me more.
It's adaptive short-term, helps survive the unbearable. But if it becomes a chronic state of numbness, it actually blocks healing. You can't process what you can't feel. One source even mentioned using naltrexone, an opioid blocker, sometimes helps lower this internal numbing so therapy can take hold.
Wow. So your own pain relief can become an obstacle.
Yeah. And patients understandably fear opening that Pandora's box of feelings and body sensations tied to the trauma. Blocking sensation feels safer, but it prevents mind-body integration. Interoceptive awareness, feeling your internal state, is key for emotional processing, but trauma can shut that down.
And didn't the sources mention reduced thalamic activity, the brain's sensory relay station?
Exactly. Like the sensory information isn't getting through properly, isn't being integrated. This disconnection can even look like depression sometimes when it's really unintegrated trauma held somatically.
Which connects to that point about craving intense external stimulation.
Yes, that powerful quote. The degree to which we cannot deeply feel our body's interior is the degree to which we crave excessive external stimulation, trying to feel something to break through the numbness.
So people learn to avoid their internal world because it feels terrifying, and the body's defenses help maintain that avoidance, but also block feeling in general.
Right, so healing has to involve gently navigating these defenses, finding ways to safely process what was unbearable. Which brings us to the therapeutic approaches.
Okay, first up, this ritual for resolving implicit memory. Sounds specific.
It is. It's described as a mindful, embodied, relational process, aiming to regulate the flow of energy and information, drawing on Siegel's integration model and Peter Levine's somatic experiencing.
Somatic experiencing focuses on the body's response, right?
Yes, and this protocol incorporates Levine's core ideas, creating safety, titrating exposure, small doses of sensation, finding rhythm, pendulation, helping the body complete survival responses, discharging stuck energy, reorienting to the present.
So it's not about sledding yourself with the memory.
Definitely not. It's very careful, gradual. It also integrates elements of CBT, exposure, EMDR, mindfulness. A really key part is step 4, involving counter-conditioning.
Counter-conditioning, using exercise.
Mild aerobic exercise, yeah.
Okay.
Like brisk walking or slow jogging. The idea is to pair the activation of trauma-related thoughts or feelings with a pleasant, rhythmic, physical experience.
How does walking help reprocess trauma?
The theory is that the bilateral rhythmic movement, 1 to 3 step sec, stimulates the brain in a calming way, maybe delta wave frequency, similar to slow wave sleep or EMDR stimulation. This seems to promote integration, helping the brain update those memory networks in the prefrontal cortex amygdala. It helps reconsolidate the memory differently.
So the pleasant feeling of moving kind of overrides the body's typical rigid defensive trauma response.
That's part of it. It creates a corrective experience. The body feels okay, maybe even good, while the difficult memory is present. That mismatch is key. It helps uncouple the physical tension patterns from the implicit memory.
And the exercise helps you stay grounded now.
Yes, grounded in the subjective emotional present, as one source puts it, combined with embodied self-awareness from the movement. Those two things are seen as crucial. It's that surprise, I'm remembering this awful thing, but my body feels all right, that can trigger the system to update.
So implicit memories, the felt sense, can become conscious.
They often do. People might recall details, feelings previously blocked. Vertical and horizontal integration seem to happen. The proposed mechanisms involve the safe environment, mindfulness calming the system, building self-efficacy, and maybe hormonal shifts facilitating memory reconsolidation.
And limiting the exposure time before the exercise is important.
Critical. Prevents overwhelm. And the protocol encourages accessing both difficult and positive or neutral feelings, that pendulation, swinging gently between the two.
Why both?
Possibly engages brain areas mapping internal states across a spectrum. Again, that mismatch between expecting overwhelm and actually feeling okay during the exercise might trigger reconsolidation or extinction. The cognitive memory stays, but the felt sense changes. The fear gets depotentiated.
And crucially, some people get better without ever consciously remembering the details.
Yes. This supports the idea that trauma is stored bodily in the nervous system and can resolve through regulating that system even without a full narrative. The body heals itself. Similar findings exist for EMDR, TFT, brain spotting.
And the therapist's role. Sounds vital.
Fundamental. The source says our nervous system stability depends on support from a safe other. The therapist's calm presence, attunement, modeling regulation, it creates the secure base needed to explore scary internal stuff. Their voice can even be a resource.
And the patient is very active in this ritual.
Very. They manage the process. Simple instructions, find a safe place, write or speak whatever comes up, positive, neutral, and negative. If distress gets high, like a 7 out of 10, stop. Tear out the writing, symbolic release, do 20 minutes mild aerobic exercise, leave it behind. If distress stays manageable, continue writing. Often helps quickly.
Puts the patient in the driver's seat for intensity.
Exactly. It's empowering, works directly with the body.
Okay, let's shift to compassion-focused therapy, CFT.
Right. CFT is described as a framework that can boost other therapies, especially helpful for people high in self-criticism and shame, which is common after trauma.
And it ties back to those affect regulation systems.
Directly. The idea is trauma often leaves the threat system overactive and the soothing system underdeveloped. CFT's main goal, particularly with younger people, is to intentionally activate that affiliative soothing system. Feeling safer internally makes other therapy work better.
And again, the relationship with the therapist is central.
Absolutely essential. Especially for kids, activating soothing depends on experiencing pair. The therapist embodies compassion, warmth, non-judgment, support. It's the experience of feeling safe and encouraged that matters most. Logic comes second to warmth in CFT.
CFT uses case formulation too.
Yes, a shared understanding built with the client, looking at background, core fears, safety strategies, coping mechanisms, and their unintended consequences. This helps the person see their struggles not as personal failings, but as understandable attempts to cope.
That not your fault message again. Very de-shaming.
Hugely important. Trauma survivors often carry immense shame. Validating the reality, framing symptoms as survival attempts, this is your body's mind's best effort, helps reduce shame, build safety, and open space for exploring new ways of coping. They use relatable analogies like an inner bully or a Formula One car brain.
And it involves specific training, compassionate mind training.
CMT, yes.
Yeah.
Think of it like neurophysiotherapy, training the brain to function differently, to feel safer, tolerate distress better, swap self-criticism for self-compassion, training compassion in 3 flows: to others, from others, and to self.
What kind of skills?
Things like compassionate attention learning to focus on what's helpful, supportively. Mindfulness is key here, paying attention, on purpose, now, non-judgmentally, with warmth. Skills like counting breaths help anchor attention gently. Then there's compassionate feeling, learning to understand and tolerate difficult emotions and use them to guide helpful action, like assertiveness. Validation is crucial, accepting all feelings is understandable.
And developing an emotional philosophy, understanding all emotions matter.
Yes, challenging the idea you should always feel happy. Teaching that difficult emotions have meaning, signal needs, seeing how negative feelings can lead to positive actions like regret leading to apology.
Is there a physical component, like the breathing?
Yes, soothing rhythm breathing. Focusing on the pause between breaths, the still quiet place, maybe counting. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, calms you down. A simple body-based tool.
And replacing self-criticism with compassionate correction.
Right, challenging that inner critic. The sources mention a fundamental educational error, punishing mistakes harshly while taking good effort for granted. CFT uses metaphors like comparing 2 schools, one punitive, one supportive, to help people question the value of harsh self-criticism.
CFT really sounds like it's about cultivating inner kindness and safety.
That's the core, activating the soothing system, building distress tolerance, non-judgment, and engaging with suffering from a place of warmth and wisdom.
Okay, let's talk internal family systems, IFS, often paired with EMDR. This model sees the mind differently, right?
Yes. IFS is evidence-based and views the mind as naturally having multiple parts alongside a core, wise, compassionate self.
Which resonates for trauma survivors often feeling fragmented.
Exactly. Feeling split off or disconnected is a natural survival strategy in overwhelming situations, walling off parts holding trauma or shame. It brings relief, but leaves things unresolved internally.
And that core belief of being at fault.
Yes. In IFS terms, trauma burdens parts with extreme negative beliefs. I'm worthless, it's my fault. These burdened parts are like stuck networks. When triggered, they replay the old feelings, beliefs, sensations, the skipping disc. IFS says every part, even difficult ones, has a positive intention. Healing involves unburdening them.
What kinds of parts does IFS talk about?
Key types include managers' protective parts trying to control life to avoid pain, like defenses, and exiles, the vulnerable, wounded parts holding the pain, shame, fear from the trauma, often like an inner child. Accessing and healing exiles is key.
And how does EMDR come in?
EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, works on the adaptive information processing, AIP model. It suggests trauma memories get stuck, holding on to the original distress. The bilateral stimulation, eye movements, tapping, seems to activate an innate brain system that processes and integrates this stuck information.
So IFS helps navigate the internal landscape during EMDR.
Precisely. Understanding the client's internal family of parts helps the therapist work more sensitively and effectively, especially with complex trauma, knowing how to communicate with protector parts, for example.
Can you give an example, like from the case study?
Sure. With Grant, the therapist introduces the model. You have a wise self and parts trying to help. Language shifts. A part of me feels. All parts welcome. Goal. Get to know them, earn trust, unburden them.
So if Grant felt terrified, but also critical of the fear,
The therapist wouldn't just push the critic away, they'd get curious. Ask the critical part if it could soften a bit. If it resists, too dangerous, explore that fear. Grant might realize the critic is protecting the terrified part.
so the critic is a protector.
Often, yes. Naming it protective part. Appreciating its role builds trust. Then, with the protector's permission, the therapist helps Grant's self approach the fearful part gently, maybe internally making eye contact, offering safety. The protector might be like a hypervigilant detective.
And the therapist helps Grant appreciate the protector's survival role.
Yes, honoring it. You did a great job keeping me safe. But explaining that now, the self can lead the healing. Negotiating with protectors is key to accessing and healing the wounded exiles. It's about connection, honoring, unburdening, letting the self lead. Learning this language empowers survivors.
It offers a way to be compassionate towards all parts of yourself.
Exactly. Turning inward with curiosity, not judgment.
Okay, briefly then, dialectical behavior therapy for complex PTSD, DBT PTSD.
Right. Another evidence-based adaptation specifically for complex trauma. The model suggests that many difficult behaviors, self-harm, suicidality, dissociation, substance use, are learned strategies to escape overwhelming primary trauma emotions: fear, powerlessness, disgust, etc.
So the behaviors are coping, even if destructive.
Attempts to cope, yes. But these strategies, plus dysfunctional beliefs, often lead to intense secondary emotions: deep shame, guilt, self-hatred, chronic anger, which then shape a negative self-concept.
What's the aim of DBT PTSD?
To help patients tolerate those primary trauma emotions, question if the secondary emotions fit the facts, and radically accept the reality of the trauma, not condone it, but accept it happened, to build a life worth living.
And specific skills are taught.
Yes, advanced distress tolerance, trauma-specific emotion regulation, managing dissociation. It also includes carefully paced exposure to trauma memories in sensory exposure to promote integration, not re-traumatization. It's very comprehensive.
So pulling these different therapies together, the ritual, CFT, IRFN-DR, DBT, PTSD, what are the common threads about what the patient does, how they integrate the healing?
Across the board, the patient is active. In the ritual, they learn to manage their own internal flow, practice independently, trust their body's signals, find ways to express, use the exercise for integration.
CFT involves active practice too.
Definitely. The exercises are mind training. Patients develop distress tolerance, staying with difficulty instead of avoiding. Practicing non-judgment, actively using compassionate attention, reasoning behavior, body soothing, working with feelings.
And IFSM-DR requires internal communication.
Yes, learning the language of parts, listening to them, understanding their burdens. Negotiating with protectors is a skill the patient develops. Reconnecting with, honoring, and unburdening parts is their internal work, led by their self.
So common themes seem to be tuning into the felt sense, the body, mindfulness, embodied awareness.
Absolutely. And the therapeutic relationship as a safe base. Gradual exposure, building tolerance, and significantly, the idea that healing can happen even without full explicit recall because the body and nervous system can regulate and update directly.
Finding ways to express trapped emotion, using the body to calm down.
Ultimately, these approaches empower people to become active participants in regulating their internal world, rebuilding safety, and creating a new, integrated relationship with their past and present.
Wow. Okay, that was a really deep dive. We've covered so much ground, how trauma impacts the brain, body, development, attachment, and looked closely at the science and practice of these different therapeutic pathways towards integration.
It's definitely complex, but understanding these mechanisms really highlights the potential for healing. It's not about erasing the past, but transforming our relationship to it, moving from just surviving to actually thriving.
Absolutely. And considering these deep roots of trauma,
Yeah.
but also the body's incredible innate capacity for healing that these therapies tap into.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What might it look like for you, for any of us, to bring a bit more curiosity, maybe some kindness, more compassion, not just externally, but internally, towards the different parts, the different responses within your own system, recognizing they've likely just been trying their very best to help you navigate a challenging world.